Hello everyone. This whiteboard session is on understanding minimum and maximum sentences for Class F through I felons. And the focus here is not on how to determine the sentence for a Class F through I felon, but rather on how the sentence is served in practice from the defendant's point of view. Most of you watching this are probably generally familiar with the felony sentencing grid. This is what it looks like, obviously. And if we're talking about a Class F through I felon, from this bottom portion of the grid, if you pick a minimum sentence from the left-hand side of the grid, the maximum that corresponds to a Class F through I felon is over on the right-hand side of the grid in the bottom portion, and all that bottom portion of the grid is doing for you is figuring out the math for determining the maximum sentence that corresponds to the minimum that you selected. And if we take a little bit closer look at that bottom portion of the right-hand side of the grid, what we can see is that the rule for calculating the maximum sentence that corresponds to any minimum is 120% of the minimum you selected from the left-hand side of the grid plus 9 months. And the reason we add that additional time in is to allow enough time in the maximum sentence to accommodate post-release supervision for the defendant that will happen upon his or her release from prison. And let's work through an example. The easiest example to use mathematically is probably a 10-month minimum with its 21-month maximum. You can that's 120% of 10 is 12 plus 9 gets you to that 21-month maximum. So let's take that 10 to 21-month sentence. It could have been, for example, for a Class H felony, 10 to 21 months, and take a closer look at how that plays out in practice. And what we'll do is we'll kind of put it on a timeline. Starting at 0, we'll show the 10-month minimum and the 21-month maximum. So when is this person actually going to get released from prison? At the very latest, by default, the prison system will release this person when he or she is at the maximum sentence minus 9 months. Why do they do that? They do that because they're required to by statute. It's 15A 1368.2 subsection A tells the prison system release an inmate, a Class F through I inmate, when they are within 9 months of their maximum sentence. For this particular defendant, that is a release at the 12-month point. So it's a little bit strange when you think about it. Why does the sentencing grid inflate the maximum by 9 months over that 120% of the minimum, only to have the prison system release the person 9 months early? We do that to preserve this last 9 months of the sentence for post-release supervision. This time period here, this remaining 9 months of imprisonment, operates like a suspended sentence that hangs over the defendant's head during a term of post-release supervision. When they're released from prison, they're on post-release supervision. They have a probation officer who supervises them. And they are on post-release supervision. The length of the post-release supervision period is governed by another statute, or another subsection of the same statute actually, 15A 1368.2 subsection C says that for a Class F through I felon, the period of post-release supervision ordinarily is 9 months. So the person's on post-release supervision for 9 months with these remaining 9 months of imprisonment hanging over their head. So you might ask then, what's the significance of the minimum sentence here for this defendant, the 10-month minimum? This differential between the minimum and the maximum minus 9 represents the defendant's opportunity to accrue earned time. Earned time is the sentence reduction credit that the prison system can award to inmates for doing good things in prison, for completing educational programming, for completing work assignments in prison, and earned time is awarded at different rates. It's either 3, 6, or 9 days per month. And an inmate who doesn't accrue any earned time at the latest is going to be released at that sort of default maximum minus 9. An inmate who does a good job of accruing earned time could potentially work their sentence down to to an earlier release point, but no earlier than the minimum sentence. Under structured sentencing, that's the earliest a person could be released unless there was advanced supervised release or that we will talk about in a separate session. So the minimum is the earliest release point. So what if our defendant had been convicted of an offense that required registration as a sex offender, a reportable conviction, to use the language of the general statutes? In terms of the minimum and maximum sentence for a Class F through I reportable felony, there wouldn't be any difference. You use the regular portion of the sentencing grid. There's no special rule for the maximum sentence. But there is a difference in the way the sentence is served. Under 15A 1368.2c, the period of post-release supervision for a Class F through I reportable offense is 5 years. So the person is on post-release supervision for 5 years with these 9 months hanging over their head during the full 5 years. And you contrast that with the non-reportable offense where the person is on post-release supervision for 9 months with the 9 months hanging over their head. And in either case, the release onto post-release supervision is going to happen between 10 and 12 months, depending on how much earned time the defendant's able to accrue. I think it's important to know that that's the way it plays out in practice, because when you look at the judgment form, all you'll see is 10 to 21 months. And the defendant really has no way of knowing that this is the way it's going to play out in practice in terms of the release point and post-release supervision and so forth. So hopefully this session is helpful in terms of getting you from here to here. So thanks for watching, and as always, let me know if you have any feedback or questions. Thanks.